Welcome to this monthly meeting of the Cobb County Planning Commission. This is a meeting that we handle a little bit differently than our other meetings throughout the year. Most meetings we consider zoning cases. This one we don't. We'll be considering changes to the comprehensive plan of Cobb County and also considering some changes to the county ordinance, what we call code amendments. I want to thank the large audience we have tonight. But I'm sure I'm sure there's millions out there watching us on TV. I want to tell everybody that the Planning Commission is an advisory board to the Board of Commissioners. Anything we do, all we do is make recommendations to the Board of Commissioners. The Board of Commissioners makes the final determinations on everything. The Board of Commissioners hearing on the comprehensive plan is scheduled for January 19th at 9 a.m. And then the code amendments, well, of course I don't have that right in front of me, but they'll hear them once in January, and then February, was that 7th, 6th? 9. January 26th and February 9th for the code amendments. So with that, I'm going to introduce Jason Gaines, who's our Planning Division Manager, and he is going to give us a little insight on how we're going to operate tonight, and also he'll be introducing the items for us to consider.
All right, thank you, Galton. Good evening to you and members of the Planning Commission and public at large. I'm Jason Gaines, Cobb County Community Development. As you stated, this is our annual comprehensive plan amendment process, and what this process entails is going back over the past year and looking at various items that have come up by way of zoning to consider making changes to the county's future land use plan in response to some of the zoning changes that have occurred. There are also some other items that are considered as part of comprehensive plan amendments, and I'm going to go through those here briefly. So tonight we will be considering three types of comprehensive plan amendments. The first, zoning decisions, and zoning decisions are pretty much what I just described. A property is rezoned in a manner that's not in accordance with the future land use map. And now that item is brought forward to consider changing the future land use designation in order to align with the zoning that was approved. We have 10 such items to consider on tonight's agenda. Second type of item are commission proposals, and those are items that come directly from the Board of Commissioners, the individual district commissioners, usually by way of citizens within their respective districts, but sometimes they do bring items to us themselves for consideration, and it could be a land use map change, it could be an amendment to text within the comprehensive plan. Those are usually the main two types. Tonight we have two items for consideration, and they are both proposed changes to the future land use map and future land use plan. The third type of item we have are staff proposals. Similar to commission proposals, these are items that are brought forth by staff instead of the commissioners, and they're usually just minor cleanup items associated with lists or text within the plan, and sometimes map changes as well. We have one such item for your consideration tonight. So with that, unless there are any questions, I can go ahead and start with the zoning decisions.
Okay, go ahead, but I want to say one thing before you do. I want to recognize that Commissioner Williams is not here tonight. She's feeling under the weather, so we want to send all our well wishes to her. And with that, go ahead.
All right,
Jason.
Thank you. All right, so our first item is ZD1. This is located in Commission District 4. It's located on the northwest side of Nickajack Road, east of Floyd Road. The proposed change is from Neighborhood Activity Center and low-density residential to medium-density residential. This is a result of zoning case Z44, which was approved by the Board of Commissioners in October of 2019.
Okay. Okay.
All right. I'm going to backtrack just a little bit as
Yep.
well. So what we do with this process, and I apologize for not covering this part of it, but what we do with this process is I'll read through all of the items, and if there is an item that you would like to discuss in more detail, you all would just let me know, and we pull it to the side, and we continue through the entire list of this particular type of item. And then when we get to the end of that list, you all would go ahead and make a motion on all of the ones that were not pulled for additional discussion. Then from that point, we would go back and address each item that was pulled for discussion individually. So I apologize for not covering that before I went into that first
Okay.
one, but
No
yes.
problem. And on zoning decision 1 that Jason just read into the record, is anybody wishing to speak on that? Not-
Is that Floyd Road? We're having a little bit of a hearing.
Yes. That is Floyd Road, the parcel that's between the Kroger and the middle school. Okay, that's one you'd like to speak on? Okay, we'll pull that off, and we will give you that opportunity in a little while.
Okay. So ZD2 is our next item. It's in Commission District 3. It's located on the southwest corner of Canton Road at Kensington Drive. The proposed changes from Neighborhood Activity Center and high-density residential, from Neighborhood Activity Center to high-density residential. This results from zoning case Z66, which was approved in December of 2019.
Okay, anybody wishing to speak on that? I'm gonna pull that case for discussion. Guess I could have just done that without asking.
All right, ZD3 is in Commission District 4. It's located on the south side of Old Powder Springs Road, west of Dunn Road. The proposed change is from Neighborhood Activity Center to high-density residential. This results from zoning case Z18, approved in February 2020.
And I'm gonna pull that one. I'll just save asking if anybody wants to speak.
Okay. ZD4 is in Commission District 1. This is located on the southeast side of Austell Road, north of the southernmost intersection at Austell Circle. The proposed change is from Neighborhood Activity Center to low-density residential. This results from zoning case Z31, approved in June of 2020.
And I'm going to be recommending denial on that, but I don't know that we need to pull it and have a involved
Yes.
discussion. Do we?
That's what we normally do.
That's what we'll do then. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. ZD5 is in Commission District 3. It's located on the northeast side of Dixie Drive, northwest of Homer Corn Road. The proposed change is from industrial compatible to industrial, and this results from zoning case Z34, approved in June 2020.
Okay, is there anybody wishing to speak on that case? Okay, I guess we got a winner to stay on.
So just so I'm clear, that one is not being pulled.
That one is not being pulled.
Thank you. All right, ZD6 is in Commission District 2. This is located southwest of the intersection of Cumberland Parkway and Atlanta Road. The proposed change is from Neighborhood Activity Center and medium-density residential to Community Activity Center. This results from zoning case Z24, approved in July 2020.
Request that we pull that one for discussion, please.
Okay. Pull that.
Okay. ZD7 is also in Commission District 2. This is located on the north side of Windy Ridge Parkway, east of Cobb Parkway. This is within the Regional Activity Center. The proposed change is from the retail services subcategory to the high-density residential subcategory. This is resulting from case Z33, approved in August 2020.
Request that we pull for discussion, please.
Okay.
Okay. ZD8 is in Commission District 2. This is located on the west side of Atlanta Road, north of Cumberland Parkway, and east of Cooper Lake Road. The proposed change is from Neighborhood Activity Center to Community Activity Center. This results from case Z38, approved in August 2020.
Request that we pull for discussion, please.
We'll pull that one.
Okay. ZD9 is in Commission District 4. This has a pretty long description with its location, but I'll go through it so that we are clear on where we're located here. This is on the west side of Mableton Parkway, the southwest side of Old Powder Springs Road, the north side of Boggs Road, the north side of Patricia Lane, and on the north side of Lynn Circle, on the east and west sides of Milam Drive, on the south side of Sunset Boulevard, and on the east and west sides of Glorious Circle. The proposed change is from Community Activity Center and Low-Density Residential to medium-density residential and Community Activity Center. This results from zoning case Z62 of 2019, which was approved in September 2020.
Okay, and I'm going to pull that one.
And our final zoning decision item is in Commission District 2. It's located on the south side of Cobb Parkway, north side of Cumberland Boulevard, and the west side of Acres Mill Road. The proposed, this is within the Regional Activity Center, and the proposed change is from the Retail Services subcategory to the Office subcategory. This results from zoning case Z42, approved in September 2020.
Okay, and does anybody want to speak on that case? Not seeing or hearing any, I think we have a second case on the consent.
Okay. So the items that I have on the list for a single motion are ZD5 and ZD10.
That's correct. So anybody want to make a motion? Or do you want me to? You want to, Fred? Okay. I'll make a motion that we recommend approval of ZD5 and ZD10 as presented. Okay, second. From Alice, all those in favor? And that carries 4-0. Okay, now we'll go back and discuss individually the cases that were polled. So we'll start back with ZD1.
All right, go back to ZD1. That is again located in Commission District 4 on the northwest side of Nickajack Road, east of Floyd Road, with a proposed change from Neighborhood Activity Center and low-density residential to medium-density residential.
Okay, thank you. And at this time, I'll open up the public hearing portion of it and ask anybody who wants to speak to come forward. You'll each have 3 minutes to tell us what you'd like to know. Right up here. Okay, and start off giving us your
Marcia
name
K.
first.
Hutter. We
Okay.
live off Windy Hill and Sandtown, and we thought that maybe they were gonna do something at the intersection, and that's why my mother, Margaret Hutter, and I are here. The traffic.
This is
no,
the case on Floyd Road right now?
The police can't do anything with the racing. I call constantly. Every Cobb County police dispatcher knows my voice. So we were thinking possibly a roundabout. What is the sign there for? What would happen to us, because it's already, the police don't stake out the old 7-Eleven anymore that's now a little restaurant. But you cannot sit outside at my parents' home, one house off of Windy Hill in Sandtown, and talk on your cell phone because of the racing. So we thought that this meeting had something to do with that.
We have a proposal coming up in the commissioner proposals, Commissioner Proposal 4, but it doesn't really deal with that portion. What it is are you directly across from the dental lab there?
Dental lab?
Yeah, where they make dentures and all of that?
No.
I think there's a lot of people don't even know what it is there, but when you
We're
say
right
you're.
there, we're right there at Windy Hill and Sandtown Road.
Right, right. And I was thinking the dental lab was at that corner as well.
Just next door to the El Salvador market, which is on the corner.
Okay,
There's
okay.
no sign, there's no sign there whatsoever for the double out.
Right, that's what I thought. So, and we're a little off track because we're on a different case, but that case will be coming up in a minute, but it's really just, there's one house that's in a designation for commercial on Sandtown. It's a little bit about, well, there's a vacant lot, there's a dental lab, a vacant lot, and then a house.
That would be the Barrel's old place.
And what we're looking at potentially doing is changing that from a commercial, plan for commercial, to be planned for residential. It really doesn't belong being planned commercial.
Please.
So that's what we're really here,
Ain't
that
gonna happen.
case. Right, so we just want to recognize that it's residential and put it in a residential category instead of, it just happens to be in a commercial category that somebody some time ago probably thought they'd redevelop the whole area and build something big commercial there, and it didn't happen. So that's really what we're here. We don't get into dealing with the police or anything. That would be coming to a regular Board of Commissioners meeting, not the special meetings for zoning, but a regular Board of Commissioners meeting, and they have periods where you can sign up to just speak about anything. And that would be the best place for you to go to talk about, you know,
Fireworks, bombs, 4
all of those
days.
things.
I called Cobb County Police 6 times. At 4:30, they finally got the noise stopped.
Yeah.
I've got 2 dogs.
I have 2, and I know exactly what you're talking
Won't
about.
go out, won't use the bathroom in the house, and won't go out.
Yeah.
Something's gotta be done. We have lived here all of our lives. We pay taxes longer than East Marietta. We got a situation.
Well,
I know the law is quitting, they're disgruntled, etc., but the police need more money.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to
Okay,
me.
well, thank you very much. I appreciate you speaking, and the Board of Commissioners are the ones who can really, you know, make the policy decisions to help with that. Okay, any other speakers on that case? Not seeing or hearing any, I'll close the public comment portion of the hearing, and I'll make a motion on ZD1 to accept it as presented. Second from Tony. Any further discussion? Not seeing any, let's call the vote. All in favor, 4-0.
All right, our next item is ZD2, located in Commission District 3 on the southwest corner of Canton Road at Kensington Drive. The proposed changes from neighborhood activity center to high-density residential.
Okay, thank you, Jason. And just to double check, is there anybody wishing to comment on that ZD2? Not seeing or hearing any. It's back to this board. And that's a case that's in Ms. Williams' district. And I told her I would handle that for her. Yeah, looking at it, we're right at the low end of high density and just barely above medium density with what was approved, but in keeping more with the area, we believe medium density would be the proper future land use. So without any, I'll make a motion that we recommend that ZD2 be changed from NAC to medium density residential. Second from Alice. Any further discussion?
Just briefly.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it would be appropriate either to leave it in NAC or MDR, either one.
Okay, and I'm going to go with, I guess what, right. So with that, we'll call the vote. And that carries 4-0 to recommend medium density.
Okay. Our next item is ZD3 in Commission District 4, located on the south side of Old Powder Springs Road, west of Dunn Road. The proposed change is from Neighborhood Activity Center to high-density residential.
Okay, anybody wishing to speak on ZD3? Not seeing or hearing any, it's back to this board, and that's a case I'm handling. I do believe that the staff recommendation of high-density residential is appropriate, but I'd like to add a text amendment to it to indicate that it was the community's desire that these be on the low end of that density range and also with individual ownership and not an apartment complex. So with that, I'm going to make a motion that we recommend approval of ZD3 from NAC to HDR with the following text amendment. That developments should be encouraged to have no more than 8 units per acre, and that units should be for individual ownership. And that's the motion. Do I have a second? Okay, second from Alice. Any further discussion? Not seeing or hearing any, call the vote. And that carries 4-0.
All right, our next item is ZD4, located in Commission District 1 on the southeast side of Austell Road, north of the southernmost intersection at Austell Circle. The proposed changes from Neighborhood Activity Center to low-density residential.
Okay, and just for the record, anybody wishing to speak on it? Not seeing or hearing any, it's back to this board and to Fred.
Thank you very much. And it'd be my recommendation that we deny this request and leave it in a NAC. Not that staff made any mistake, but just simply because the long-range plan is for this to get developed as part of in conjunction with the surrounding properties.
Yeah, and I'll just say for anybody watching that sometimes parcels get rezoned because of, in this case, an existing house that they wanted to use residentially, but when the property's redeveloped at some point, it would probably be redeveloped commercial, and what we're doing is a future plan, not necessarily what's there today. So with that, you made a motion, so do we have a
Yes,
second?
Mr. Chairman, the motion is to deny and leave it in a NAC.
Okay, a second. Second from Tony. Any further discussion? All those in favor? 4-0 for denial.
All right, our next item is ZD6, located in Commission District 2 on the southwest of the intersection of Cumberland Parkway at Atlanta Road. Proposed changes from Neighborhood Activity Center and Medium Density Residential to Community Activity Center.
Okay, anybody wishing to comment on that case? Not seeing any, it's back to this board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When we rezoned this one, we had numerous discussions with members of the community and discussed that the retail and commercial properties to the west of this that are currently in a NAC, but also still zoned commercial, that we would take efforts to make sure that those did not develop too intensely and provide a step down between the medical center and the neighborhoods. So accordingly, would make a recommendation that we how do we want to say that we're changing the land use plan on that? We're not rezoning. But
You
would
could
recommend that the entire parcel be applied to an NAC instead of a CAC.
Okay, and that was the motion.
That's the motion.
Okay, do we have a second? Second. Okay, second from Fred. Any further discussion? Seeing any, call the question. Carries 4-0.
All right, our next item is ZD7, also in Commission District 2, on the north side of Windy Ridge Parkway, east of Cobb Parkway. This is within the Regional Activity Center and involves a change from the retail services subcategory to the high-density residential subcategory.
Okay, anybody wishing to comment on it? Not seeing any, it's back to this board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When this one was originally filed for zoning, it included apartments and a hotel. The hotel was ultimately dropped. The apartments were reconfigured. And so far at the moment, they've not been able to get an LDP or have not proceeded far enough to get an LDP so that we know it is in fact going to proceed as zoned. So I would recommend that this one not be changed until the LDP is received. So whenever staff feels comfortable presenting it after that time.
So you want to make, why don't we recommend we look at it again next year?
Then that'll be fine to say that we'll look at that again in 2022.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, even though it's not in my head approvingly, just let the record reflect I'm just recusing myself from this and I've not participated in the discussion about this matter and will abstain from voting on it. Thank you.
Okay, good enough. So the motion is to,
Motion is to
To hold
hold
it.
this until the 2022 amendments.
sounds weird saying 2022. Do I have a second? Okay, second from Alice. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. Call the question. Carries 3-0 with Fred abstaining or recusing.
Okay, our next item is ZD8, also in Commission District 2, on the west side of Atlanta Road, north of Cumberland Parkway, and east of Cooper Lake Road. Proposed changes from Neighborhood Activity Center to Community Activity Center.
Okay, anybody wishing to speak on this? Not seeing any. It's back to this board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When this property was rezoned, it was discussed that it was specifically for the use by St. Benedict's, and it was anticipated that that use might be temporary. And within that frame, I don't believe we should change the land use plan to such an aggressive category at this time, and would recommend that we leave it as Neighborhood Activity Center.
You recommend denial.
Will recommend denial.
Okay, do I have a second? Second from Alice. Any further discussion? Okay, with not seeing any, call the vote. 4-0.
All right, and our last item is ZD9 in Commission District 4, on the west side of Mapleton Parkway, southwest side of Old Powder Springs Road, north side of Boggs Road, north side of Patrician Lane, north side of Lynn Circle, east and west sides of Milam Drive, south side of Sunset Boulevard, east and west sides of Gloria Circle. Proposed changes from Community Activity Center and Low-Density Residential to Medium-Density Residential and Community Activity Center.
Okay, anybody wishing to speak on ZD9? Not seeing any, it's back to this board. And that's the case I'm handling. This was a kind of complex zoning as we did it. And what we ended up with is a little retail node, but we're going to have a case come up in just a minute that will, or a commissioner proposal that will change some of the adjacent future land use to Neighborhood Activity Center, and I think that would be appropriate for this one use that's really designed primarily for the neighborhood. So rather than CAC, which is Community Activity Center, change that to Neighborhood Activity Center. And then also the parcels to the, on the west side of Milam Drive were intentionally left in a low-density type development. So I think that would be more appropriate as low density. So I'm going to make a motion that we recommend that the future land use categories be NAC instead of CAC as proposed. And also that the properties to the west of Milam Drive remain LDR. Can I get a second on that motion? Second from Alice. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. Call the question. 4-0. And that finishes up our zoning decisions.
All right, next we have our commissioner proposals. We have 2 items, and we'll follow the same basic process where I'll read the item into the record, and if there's a desire to have additional discussion on that item, you all would indicate such. Otherwise, we move on to the next item, and then whatever has not been pulled will be voted on in a single motion, and then the other items would be heard individually.
As we only have 2, and we'll probably discuss the second one, let's just do them individually to start with.
Okay, fair enough. Our first item is CP 4-1, which is in Commission District 4. In fact, both our items are in District 4, so I'll just put that out there. This one involves a parcel located south of Windy Hill Road on the east side of Sandtown Road for a proposed change from neighborhood activity center to medium-density residential.
Okay. Is there anybody wishing to speak on it? Not seeing any, it's back to this board. This is one in my district, and I think this particularly only makes sense because it's one house kind of on an island in a neighborhood activity center, so changing it makes sense. So I'm going to make a motion that we recommend approval of CP 4-1. Do I have a second? Second from Alice. Any further discussion? All in favor? And it carries 4-0.
All right. And our last item is CP 4-2, consisting of multiple parcels located on the west side of Mapleton Parkway, south of Old Alabama Road, and north of Old Powder Springs Road. The proposed change is from Community Activity Center to Neighborhood Activity Center.
Okay, anybody wishing to speak on it? Not seeing any, it's back to this board, also one I'm handling. This is a little challenging triangle in that there's a number of properties that front Mapleton Parkway. Got shut off for a second. We good? That front Mapleton Parkway, or, you know, I have parking lots or kind of an accessory use to Mapleton Parkway. And then there's other parcels that are really projecting into the neighborhood. So rather than the proposal is to change them all from a community activity center to a neighborhood activity center, I'm going to split it a little bit and take the parcels that really serve Mapleton Parkway and recommend that we recommend that those are changed to neighborhood activity center, but the 5 most western parcels, that those parcels be changed to low-density residential. And that would be my motion. Is there a second? Second from Alice?
Just point of order or clarification.
Yes.
It just went away, but there was one lot that was shown as R20. Is that
Right.
one of the 5 or?
That is one of the 5.
Okay.
Along that point, Mr. Chair, if I may interject, I had a conversation with County Clerk's Office staff before the beginning of the hearing, and for their record-keeping purposes, they would need the actual parcel numbers identifying those 5 included in the record, and I've identified those, and I
Okay.
can read them off for you here if that would assist you.
Okay, that will be helpful.
Okay. We've got parcel ID 18007800380, 18007800390, 18007800400, 18007800410, and 18007800460.
Okay, thank you. So I'll amend my motion to include those parcel IDs that would be changed to low-density residential. And second, good with that? Second is good. Any further discussion? Okay, call the question, and that carries 5-0 in favor. or 4-0.
All right. Our final comprehensive plan amendment item for tonight is a staff proposal. SP1 involves the addition of supplemental studies to the list of plans and studies contained within the comprehensive plan document. And in this instance, the specific addition to that list is the Johnson Ferry Shallowford Master Plan, which was adopted by the Board of Commissioners this past summer.
Okay, thank you, Jason, and I think that's Tony's district, so.
This does match what was presented and agreed and discussed with the community, so I would recommend that we approve this item to the Board of Commissioners.
Okay. And your second? Alice's second. Any further discussion? Seeing any, all in favor? That carries 4-0. Okay, and that completes our comprehensive plan amendments. Now we'll go into the code amendments. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you all.
Good evening, everyone. Jessica Gwynn, Community Development Director here in Cobb County. And we have a presentation. All right, very good. So as you know, we do our code amendments annually. The code amendments that come to you all as the Planning Commission are the code amendments to the Chapter 134, the zoning ordinance. And as the chairman said earlier, these code amendments will be presented for the first public hearing to the Board of Commissioners on January 26th, and the second public hearing is scheduled for February 9th. The amendments this year for Chapter 134, as I shared with you during the work session, really are pretty minimal in terms of any substantial policy shifts. They're mostly things to clean up some things, and so that's what we'll talk about this evening. The first one, Section 134-168, this pertains to property that's zoned conservation subdivision and accessory structures. As we discussed, we no longer have the conservation subdivision zoning district in the zoning code. However, we do have some legacy properties that are zoned CS. So what this provides for is that those CS properties where they have an accessory structure, the old code called for them to come to the Board of Commissioners for approval. And at this point, we're going to recommend, rather than going through that process, that they would be approved just like any other accessory structure in any other zoning district, residential district. The next one is Section 134-221.2. This is the redevelopment overlay district. As we discussed, the redevelopment overlay district was adopted in about 2006. We've only received one application for that district in that time, and nearly 15 years. What's being proposed is that no new applications for ROD would be accepted after March 1st of this year. Essentially, that'll give us an opportunity to go back and look at the ROD district and see, what was initially the intent of that district whenever it was created, what are the goals of the county currently, and we can do that through our comprehensive planning process, and look at how do we rework this, or what's another tool that maybe we could implement that would achieve the goals that perhaps were intended with the redevelopment overlay district. Section 134-290, this is the Austell Road Design Overlay District. The design guidelines for Austell Road have been adopted for some time. Currently, they're guidelines, they're not codified. The Commissioner for District 4 requested, former Commissioner for District 4, now Chairwoman Cupid, requested that we bring this forward for codification, and of course that was done a few years ago with the Mapleton Parkway design guidelines. Those are now part of the code, and this will give those guidelines some additional teeth, the teeth of the law, so to speak. So at this point, we are not proposing any changes to the guidelines, and I know we had a pretty lengthy discussion about that in the work session, so I'm glad to hear any comments you want to share about that this evening. Several changes to the sign ordinance, and again, the sign ordinance was redone in late 2019. After a year of implementation, we found that there are several pieces that could be improved in order to better achieve the county's goals and to help facilitate enforcement and help our code enforcement officers a bit. So the first is to add a definition for banner, and that's something that was in the previous sign code, and at this point, with the sign code that was adopted in 2019, did not carry over. So the definition that's being proposed is a piece of fabric or other flexible material that's attached to a temporary pole enclosed in a frame or mounted on a building as a temporary sign device. Flags shall not be considered banners. And ultimately, what differentiates a flag from a banner would be whether it's on a permanent flagpole versus a temporary structure such as a temporary pole here and something that's intended for temporary use. And then the definition for sign was amended to designate that flags are not signs by definition. We added some prohibited signs to the code. Again, these are some things that just didn't make it over whenever the new code was adopted. The first is signs within easements or setbacks for water, sewer, or drainage, with a stipulation there that that is something that the water director can approve a variance for. And typically, if the water director is going to approve a variance there, what would be required is a hold harmless agreement, so that if the water department had to come in there and make some improvements or make some repairs to their facilities and those easements, that if something were to happen to the sign through that process, that the water department would not be responsible for that. Signs on trees, utility poles, rocks, and other natural features, pennants and streamers, a mechanical fan and wind-activated devices, and also signs in good repair, or sometimes you'll see a sign where the sign panel is missing, and you see exposed light bulbs. Those sorts of things would not be permitted. And under the code that we have right now, we don't have a mechanism for code enforcement to address those issues. Nonconforming signs, just to clarify that if a sign was legally permitted under the old code at a certain square footage, that if they were to come in and redo that same sign, as long as it didn't exceed the square footage of what was approved previously, that would be, and this is really just a clarification that would still be legally nonconforming. Some changes to how we calculate commercially and industrial zone properties. So currently, under the code that was adopted last year or in 2019, the maximum allowable square footage for a wall or awning sign is 49 square feet. And as you can imagine, for most commercial or industrial zone properties, that's not really sufficient to advertise their business. So what's being proposed, and this will hopefully eliminate some of the variance requests that goes to the Board of Zoning Appeals, is to change that maximum to 150 square foot for 1- and 2-story buildings or buildings under 20 feet, or a maximum of 200 square feet for buildings that are over 2 stories or more than 20 feet. If it's a multi-tenant center and they have wall signs, those wall signs would need to be affixed to the actual wall of the tenant space that tenant is occupying. And then also to make it clear that electronic messaging is limited to 32 square feet, no more than 2 electronic messages per board or per sign. For non-residential uses on residential properties, this clarifies that residential subdivision signs and apartment communities are not classified as residential uses, as would be some of those non-residential uses. This would clarify that the sign calculation for those would be 32 square feet for lots under 5 acres and 64 square feet for lots over 5 acres. And that the sign must be at least 1 foot off of the right-of-way. Temporary signs in commercially and industrial zone properties, the maximum allowable area has been reduced from 200 to 100 square feet. 200 square feet is a very large temporary sign. So this is sort of a trade-off there. Of course, we allowed for additional wall signage, but a more reasonable temporary sign. And then finally, and I know this is probably the most earth-shattering thing in here, for permitting, we are only going to require 1 copy of the plans for freestanding signs, whereas currently we require 2. So we just don't need that second set, and we'll let our applicants save their copies there. And that's it for me. I'm glad to answer any questions or take any feedback, and I appreciate the great dialogue that you all had during the work session this afternoon too.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. With that, is there anybody who would like to comment on any of these ordinance changes? Not seeing any, we'll bring it back to this board for discussion. And we'll probably just, I think the easiest thing may be to go through each major section and just make a motion on those. So the first one was 134, 168 for the conservation subdivision accessory structures. Is there any discussion on that? I don't think so, so I'll make a motion that we recommend approval of that change for 134, 168. Any further discussion? With that, call the vote. All in favor? 4-0. Okay. The second section was 134, 221.2, the redevelopment overlay. And that's basically to stop accepting applications from it after March 1st, I think it was. Is there any discussion before we get a motion? Okay, go ahead, Tony.
I know we had a good discussion on this in the work session. I still remain concerned that we are discarding this item totally rather than making the revisions to address the specific concerns. That would leave it to be a potentially effective zoning category and application.
Okay. Fred?
Yeah, in light of that comment, can we, I know in the past you've sometimes, including tonight, appended a note that we request that the Board of Commissioners give consideration, since they set policy, not us, but that they give consideration to creating an ROD category and create a new series of guidelines and uses to be used in conjunction with that.
I think we can do that. So is that all the discussion? Okay, with that, I'll make a motion that we recommend approval of the change to 134, 221.2 with the addition of a clerk's note that Fred just read in. Do we have a second? Okay. I guess we'll give it to Tony this time. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor of the motion? 4-0. Approved. Okay. The next section is 134-290, which covers the Austell Road Design Overlay District. And, you know, during our work session, we talked, in large part, this was taken out of the design guidelines and, you know, an effort to move it into the actual ordinance. Guidelines are just that, just a guideline, where putting it in the ordinance makes it a requirement. And we noted that there were, as we went through, there were several items that I think, you know, could use the wording tightened up a little bit and reworded when you make it a requirement versus just a guideline. You want to be careful at how you say that requirement is and not have it have consequences that you didn't intend, where the guidelines offered flexibility for staff to make interpretations. When you put it in the code, staff's expected to follow the code, which takes, you know, any discretion out of their part. And in a number of these, we found we need to do a little tweaking to put the discretion back in. So I think with that, you know, without going into all the stuff that we discussed in the work session, I'm going to make a motion on 134-290 that we ask staff to go back and look at those items that we discussed in the work session and bring us a revised ordinance on this area at our next meeting, which would be our February meeting, which will be before the Board of Commissioners actually makes a decision on this. So that would be my motion. Is there any further discussion, or can I get a second before we discuss? Second from Alice. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? That carries 4-0. Okay. And then the next section is the sign section, which actually has more than one code section. Let's see, what do we want to, I guess maybe we'll just do each section of that since they're broken down into different ones. 134, 312 definitions. I think, did we have a definition we talked about modifying at our work session? Trying to, I think, didn't you propose something, Tony?
Commissioner, Chairman, I'm sorry, yes. Under the definition of banner, I believe we discussed that rather than saying mounted on a building, if we said mounted on a structure, then it would be more encompassing to include the building, auxiliary structures, fences, et cetera, where banners or such might be attached.
Okay, and I think that was our only change on the definition section, or do you have something, Fred?
Well, I just came up with one more, and it was an oversight on my part until just a moment ago, but under major roads, unless the staff has a reason for not going this way, I would include Interstate 575 as a major road.
It seemed
Good
reasonable.
catch.
I don't expect that should be, yeah, I don't see any reason not to. I think that's appropriate. We can include that.
So I guess we'll make a motion to recommend approval of 134-312 with the following changes. Under the definition of banner, we are changing the word building to structure. Was it? And under the definition of major roads, we are adding Interstate 575. Do I have a second? A second from Alice. Any further discussion? And with that, call the question. And that carries 5-0 in favor. Okay. Moving on to section 134-314. Let's see. I got to look at my notes and see. We discussed some of these things and addressed them. Oh, there's one that we didn't discuss in the work session, and that is under section D. It said sign unless granted by the Board of Zoning Appeals. I think we should also add or the Board of Commissioners, because sometimes things come as other business and they may deal with it in a zoning or other business.
Which, I'm
What
sorry,
is that?
where's?
I'm on page 125, near the bottom, item D.
Okay.
I just don't like to see where, you know, maybe it doesn't make sense. Maybe I'm reading too much into it.
That's fine. No, Mr. Chairman, on the same, on section 314C, and it may just be my ignorance, but I've read it a couple times and I don't fully understand it. Any sign larger than 12 feet on property that is currently vacant or zoned or in use for residential purposes.
I think I commented before, I thought there were a little too many ors in there to, it's a little hard to read. I think they're saying that's,
And
What are we
that's,
getting at there? And let me draw back. Earlier this year, I asked for somebody to rewrite a zone ordinance, and you folks have obviously done a lot of great work, so I don't mean to seem like a complete ingrate for picking at stuff. I just want to try to help make it even just a hair bit better, but I appreciate all your good work.
well, perhaps on this one, because, and, you know, this isn't one of the changes that's been proposed, this is in our current code.
Right.
I think the intent here, signs larger than 12 square feet on property that's currently vacant or zoned or in use for residential purposes. I think the intent there is that we're not going to have huge signs on single-family residentially zoned or vacant properties. So perhaps if we add in there single-family residential purposes, do you think that may clarify it?
No,
or-
I think it'd be sufficient if you're saying zoned as or in use for residential purpose. If you just add the word as, I think that would take care of my concern. My concern is it's ambiguous, since arguably that statement would apply to any property that is zoned as anything.
Right.
So I think just adding an as after the word zoned would be sufficient for my concerns anyway.
Okay. That certainly makes sense. And did you happen to read D and see if you think it makes sense to add the Board of Commissioners as somebody who could approve those?
I don't see any reason not to.
Okay.
We can add
And
that.
let me see if I have anything else in this section. Well, let me look at F real quick. I have a note on F.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead.
I think if we also look at the new EF that's listed on the top of
Right.
page 126.
That's what I'm looking at right now.
Yeah, that's the other one you were talking about with the or, and we would make the same change that Mr. Boulogne recommended by inserting the word as zoned, or zoned as, I'm
As,
sorry.
zoned as. And then, okay. It was 20 square feet, the same square footage we had on all these. We had 12 square feet in C. And we have 20 square feet in F.
So C speaks to an individual sign.
Okay.
Whereas F speaks to the total aggregate. So you can have,
Right.
3 6-square-foot signs.
Okay, okay, got it. That works then. That's, I'm not gonna worry about that. Oh, there's a little bit of conflicting language. K on this one says wall signs projecting more than 24 inches from the building, so that's the max you can have. But then we have in 134-321G, a blade sign may project up to 48 inches from the wall or surface which it is attached. Now, maybe one we're in residential, where, that's just prohibited signs. So we have one place where it says it can be 48 and one where it says it can only be
Well, and
24.
blade signs and wall signs are different kinds of signs.
If you read the definition of wall signs, it includes blade signs. Because that's when I first read it, I thought, okay, I have to go back to the definition.
Well, and perhaps then, maybe that's what we need to look at is, I see where you're,
Right, I
I see
just
where
want to
your point
clarify
is.
which is it,
Right.
I mean, I don't care that much, just,
right,
we could put, 24 inches except for blade signs allowed
Right.
to 48 inches.
I think that's the easiest fix if we just clarify that that does not pertain to blade signs. So wall signs other than blade signs projecting more than 24 inches from the building surface.
Right. Okay. That's all I have in this particular section. Now let's look at, let's see if I can make a motion out of that. Let's recommend approval of 134-314 with the following changes. In item C, after the word zoned, add the word as. In item D, after Board of Zoning Appeals, put a comma, Board of Commissioners, and then it follows with an or. On item F, after the word zoned, add an as. And on item K, to the end of that, just put a comma, except blade signs, maybe 48 inches. may project 48 inches. And I think that's the motion for the recommendation. Is that second from Alice? Any further discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? And that carries 4-0. Okay, we'll go on to 134-319. And that's a very simple change of just saying, just clarifying that previously permitted signs are considered legal non-conforming, essentially. Any discussion on that one? Just make a recommendation that we recommend approval of 134-319 to the Board of Commissioners. Okay, further discussion, all in favor? That's 4-0. Okay, 134-321, commercially and industrially zoned properties. I'll skip that for now. We didn't discuss that. We talked about that. So I don't think I have any issues. Anybody have any issues to discuss on that one? I do. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, yes. Had a chance to collect some additional input from a couple of community members between our work session and now. And there's still a concern that the maximum sign size that would be allowed on the side of a building is excessive for an automatic approval. And while the last time that they appeared to the variance board in opposition and the variance board approved the requested sign, they would rather have the opportunity to have input when signs that large are requested. So we'd like to have some discussion about what size should automatically be allowed without having to go to the variance and appeals board.
And one of the things that seems to me that's missing that a lot of sign people factor in when they're doing things is the distance from the road the sign's actually going to be. Because if it's, a lot of the variance cases we get, it's a shopping center and the shopping center sits way off the road because all the parking in front of it, and you need a bigger sign. But with some of the new style ones where they pull it right up on the road, these signs potentially could be way too big. And I also had a note that, if we get to some of our larger developments that maybe are 50-acre development, then, we may be limiting the signs too much on 50 acres. Maybe this chart ought to, for each acre over 10 acres, you get so much additional, signage or something as well. That was a comment. We didn't discuss that earlier, but I wonder if maybe we could, I think it's important that we give the Board of Commissioners something, because right now what we have is really not working. So maybe, I'm thinking maybe recommend approval of this, but ask the Board of Commissioners in a text note to further investigate and part of it may be working with some of the professional sign companies, to go about how they recommend sizing signs to people, which may, play into something. I still believe the distance the sign is from the right-of-way makes a big difference.
And just for a point of clarification, because it's not up here, the calculation for a wall sign is still 1 square foot per linear foot of the building frontage. So that hasn't changed. This would just, if you've got 100 linear feet frontage of your building, then you would be able to have a 150 square foot sign. So you wouldn't have these huge signs on the smaller buildings. I'm sure you're all aware of that. I just want to be sure that I got that on the record too, just for clarity.
Go ahead, Fred.
Yeah, just a couple more points. And again, I appreciate the good work done by staff to move us in the right direction. I think we still have some more work to do, though, in this section. Just for example, by way of example, under subpart E on page 128 of our changes, we stop at 2 stories. We differentiate in size, but then we stop at 2 stories. And I'm not sure there's a terribly appreciable, so that's the break for things over 2 stories. So we go 1 to 2 stories, then we go over 2 stories. But just for example, the difference between a 3-story building and a 1-story building is there's some difference that would justify a bump, but then let's say somebody's coming in here for a sign, we're going to still force people to come in for sign variances on a 20-story building or a 15. I don't know if we have one. Yeah, we do. We do have a couple, but I think we need to have more grades assigned in there to try to help some of our folks with taller buildings not have to come in here as frequently. I'd like to see us move towards that so we can minimize the burden on them. And I know most folks that own a skyscraper can afford to hire an architect or somebody and come in for a variance. But by the same token, if we can just have something that's workable so they don't have to come in at all, I'd love to see it. Additionally, my other concern is consistent with Commissioner Wabright's, and that is that having been the person that complained initially that the net we set under the last code was too restrictive and was catching too many folks, I'm concerned that the parameters we're setting here are a little bit too liberal and that we're perhaps not fairly taking into consideration the concerns of some of the community groups in the county in that regard. So I'd hate to go from just too restrictive to too liberal in this regard, to the detriment of concerns of a lot of the community groups. So, and I'm just reading this very quickly and comparing it to some of my recollection on some of the variance cases we've had where we've ended up with smaller signs in some circumstances than what we'd be allowing here. So I want to see us move in this direction. I think in certain circumstances we need to take into account things like specifically give a step up for the height of the building, but have more than just one breakdown, which is 2 stories or less, or 3 stories or more, which is the only breakdown here. And additionally, give consideration to the distance from the road that the sign is facing, right? So if it sits 1,000 feet back as opposed to 25 feet back, that some consideration should be given to that. Those were specific factors that we discussed previously. So my thought would be that we try to rework this for another month if we can still do that possibly and get that before the Board of Commissioners on a timely basis. And in that regard, and slightly off point, since it's something else we've dealt with tonight on an unrelated matter, I'd never brought this up before, but I think the high density category, the HDR category we have, that's something we have very low density and low density, but then we just have high density. I think at some point we need to look at having high density, very high density, and perhaps extremely high density, breaking that down into maybe 3 categories so folks don't try to go instantly thinking 8 units per acre should immediately be allowed to take them into a category where they can go with 60 per acre. It's just another place where I think if we broke things down into a few more categories or grades, that we could avoid capturing people or owners that shouldn't be captured and forced to come into a variance, and by the same token still protect better the community.
Okay, so.
And again, I apologize for seeming critical. I very much appreciate the good work that's being done to move us in a positive direction.
Now, let me ask you, Jessica. Do you think it's possible for staff to work on some of what we just discussed by our next meeting?
Yes, absolutely. I'll be glad to go back to the office and talk with John about it, and we can take a look at it. And I'm sure that he's combed through the variance requests that have been approved to come up with these numbers, but we can see what we can do to maybe hone in on it a little bit more. And I appreciate your comments, Mr. Boulogne, about the densities. I think that's, it's interesting to see that it's such a legacy of a 1972 zoning ordinance, and obviously Cobb County is a much different place now than it was in 1972, and so I think that's certainly a great conversation for us to have down the road as we really start to take a deeper dive into our ordinances there.
Yeah.
But yes, we'll be glad to take another look at that and bring it back
Okay.
next month.
Well, why don't we do this on this one then? Why don't we, did I lose my place? Yeah, we're on 134, 321. Make a recommendation that we hold this until our February hearing and ask staff to work on some revisions that we discussed and bring it back to us in February.
Absolutely.
Do I have a second on that motion? Second from Alice. Any further discussion? Well, that will call the question. All in favor? Carries 4-0. So that's, okay. Now we're on to 134, 322, which is the non-residential uses on residential properties. Okay, discuss those couple points I had. Now, I have a concern on B on electronic signs. And that is that I would prefer some kind of approval process for signs on local roads and residentially zoned properties. And not, I can understand if they're on an arterial or a collector, it probably is fine to let them do that, but, you know, it could be a problem. You have the little church on, right on a residential street, and people don't want this bright sign out in front. So I think those should have to come for some kind of approval process. I don't know exactly how to word that. Maybe you guys can work on that a little bit.
So just for the sake of clarity, because, you know, right now, of course, the approval process is the permit process, and as we discussed, there are
Right.
standards for illumination, what have you, that staff would take into consideration. Are you looking for a public approval process whereby it would be a public hearing?
Yeah, probably like a Board of Zoning Appeals where they'd come in and need to request it, or maybe another business, whatever you guys think's more appropriate, but some kind of a public process so the neighbors would be informed of this potential electronic sign coming on this local road and be able to come in and either voice their support or opposition to it.
We can take a look at it.
Okay, so I'll make a recommendation on 134, 322, that we hold that and ask staff to bring us back some changes based on our comment at our February meeting.
And Mr. Chairman, I think at our work session earlier today, I think you also had a comment regarding the definition of lot size.
I did, and maybe we could just clean up that language just a little bit too. It's, you know, it's a little, I was gonna let that one go, but as long as you're cleaning it up. And that was, it just doesn't read very well to make it clear you're talking about all the lots in the subdivision.
Okay, we can see if there's a way to make that more clear.
Okay, so I guess, did I get a second to the motion? Okay, Alice gave a second. You have some further discussion?
Just a little, as you look at that, and I think also what Fred was talking about, because these signs are located, the entities being discussed are located in neighborhoods.
Right.
On the other hand, there are also situations where a church, for instance, might front on one side to a neighborhood and front on another side to a commercial road. So if you can, perhaps as you talk about, because signs could be on different roads with sufficient frontage, that one designation might be whether it's fronting to additional residential property that's being used as residential, or whether it's fronting to commercial property on that road. If that,
Yeah, that may be useful too. Giving you plenty of homework. Let's see.
Job security, right? Keeps us busy. Thank you.
Let's see. Okay, let's see. I don't think we called the vote on that yet. That's all the discussion. All in favor of holding it. So that carries 4-0 to hold it till February. And then we have 134-323, which changes the size of temporary signs. I think that's only change in there. Any discussion on that? If not, I'll make a motion that we recommend approval of 134-323 to the Board of Commissioners. Second, Alice. So Alice, second. All those in favor? Carries 4-0. Okay. And then we have administration and enforcement. And we have 134-343. That was basically reducing the number of copies. I'm sure we're all not in favor of letting the public save money. Just kidding. So I'll make a motion that we recommend approval of 134-343 to the Board of Commissioners. Second by Alice. Any further discussion?
Yeah, can I just ask a question of our permanent county employee rather than of the Christmas help up here? If a sign has not been installed within 6 months, the only thing I hate here is if somebody goes through a variance process and for some reason their contractor doesn't get the sign up within 6 months, that they would have to go back through all those hoops again. I'm wondering if maybe we can give them a little more, unless the county strenuously objects, I would ask that we consider giving folks maybe a year rather than 6 months. And part of that's due to what's happened in this COVID year where people can't get anything done in 6 months, it seems sometimes. Any strong feelings? Is that a rigid guideline that the county's gone by in other similar matters? Or?
Well, in the instance of a variance, if there had been a variance granted, the variance would follow the variance timeline if there's any expiration there. So if they pulled a permit for the sign, didn't get the sign within 6 months, and then they came back, as long as the variance is still good, and they could still get their sign permit. But I will tell you, most of the time, they don't pull a permit for a sign until they are ready to put the sign up tomorrow. So it's typically not a long window from the time they submit to the time that they actually begin work.
Or they
Okay,
put up the
thank you.
sign yesterday. When they pull it.
Thank you for that explanation. Appreciate it.
Okay, with that, I'll make a recommendation that or did we already do that? I forget. Did I already make a motion? Okay, so we just need to vote now, right? Okay, all those in favor? And so that's 4-0. I think that concludes all of them, doesn't it?
That's everything I
That's
have.
everything.
Thank you all. Appreciate
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Appreciate you staying late with us. Here, I thought this was going to be a quick meeting, and we drug it out for an hour and 20 minutes, which is still a quick meeting for us, but so with that, everybody go on and cheer on your favorite football team as long as it's from up north. And
Just one more note, as long as we're on TV, I just wanted to mention, Mr. Chairman, thank you for the privilege of being able to say this, that we have the interesting result of last year's election in the 100th anniversary year of the state of Tennessee ratifying the, I believe it was 19th Amendment to the Constitution that gave women the right to vote in 1920, that 100 years later, Cobb County elected certain individuals, which left us with the first ever all-female Board of Commissioners. So it's going to be an interesting year, and it's I think it's just a very interesting coincidence that happened 100 years to the year after the ratification of that amendment.
And I hope, normally our meetings are in the morning on voting day, so we normally tell people to go vote, but obviously we're a little late for that, so I hope everybody went and voted, and we'll be looking forward to the results. With that, I think we stand adjourned.